Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's special joint City Council and Planning Commission meeting on April 30th. We'll call this meeting to order at 5:32. With that, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand. Salute. Pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Republic. And one nation. Under God. Indivisible. With liberty and justice. Perfect. Next, we will have roll call, please.
Thank you. Mayor Hudson,
Present.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Hanson,
Here.
Councilmember Pride,
Here.
and Councilmember Busby. Looks like he's absent. And then we have Chair Quorum is absent. Vice Chair McNeil is absent. Commissioner Nygaard.
Here.
Commissioner Brott.
Here.
And Commissioner Powell.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. First item on the agenda, item 4, workshop public comment. Individuals wishing to speak on Title 18 workshop are asked to complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk. Comments should be directed to the council and planning commission and are limited to 3 minutes. By law, the council or the planning commission cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Item 4, do we have any public comment regarding Title 18, the workshop, on our workshop?
I have no comment cards.
Next item, item 5, Municipal Code Title 18 Zoning Workshop. Recommended action, present, discuss, seek feedback, and consider any proposed modifications to draft Title 18 zoning of the Willows Municipal Code for the City Council, Planning Commission, city staff, and the public. Presented by Harrison Associates, Contract City Planners. We will have Joe Betancourt lead us off on this, please.
Good evening, everyone, and members of the public. First off, I want to welcome Commissioner Powell to the Planning Commission. We were very thankful and excited to have you on board and have a full Planning Commission once again. So we look forward to your input on making our community a better and safer place. I also want to thank the City Council and Planning Commission for their effort in reviewing Title 18. The Planning Commission dedicated 2 meetings in 2025 to review the entirety of the Title 18 and provide feedback. In early 2025, in July of 2025, the City Council and Planning Commission held a meeting and provided direction to Harrison Associates on what the Council and Planning Commission was looking to achieve in this update. Also, a public workshop was held on December of 2025. In this meeting, we'll be reviewing the first red line draft of Title 18 to gather additional input from the City Council, Planning Commission, and the public so that we can fine tune the draft and do a final version. With that, I'd like to thank Harrison Associates for being here and their hard work on getting us to this point. And I will pass it over to Amy and Delaney for their presentation.
Great, thank you. I think we do have a PowerPoint. Just to give a brief introduction, I'm Delaney Garlick. I'm with Harrison Associates. We've been past here helping out with the zoning code, municipal code update.
Yep. And I'm Amy Rossig. A lot of you are pretty familiar with me. I come to a lot of the Planning Commission meetings. And so, ready? Oh, let me kind of lead off. Okay. So the intent of today's workshop is to try to provide you with a red line. We've had 2 workshops to try to gather a lot of public comment and information. The last time we all sat together at this table was back in July of 2025. And a lot of you filled out little comment cards and provided a lot of feedback. And so I took all of those comments and I typed them into one document so that way I could look at all of the information together so that way we could analyze it. And I just quickly wanted to kind of go over the results and what feedback we received from you all back in July. 4 times, folks had mentioned that the current code is overly restrictive and there needs to be some flexibility and modernization. Also 4 times, signage regulation was brought up and said that it was too complex and need to be updated and simplified. 3 times, there was comments about architectural review and that's too rigid and that perhaps shifting to an in-house and laying some of the requirements would be ideal. 3 times, there were mentions about zoning and permitted uses and streamlining and allowing some flexibility with the permitted uses. 3 times mobile food trucks came up and talking about defining and where mobile food trucks should be allowed. And then twice was brought up about code enforcement and there needs to be more structure and realistic penalties. All right. So we took all of that information, we kind of condensed it and was thinking, how can we implement these ideas? So we went through and came up with a list of things that we could make changes to your existing code. So some of it is formatting, just allowing it to be a little bit more user friendly. Creating summary tables, which would define different uses and where those uses would be allowed. So that way, if somebody says, I want to open up a retail shop and I want to come into town, where can I open up? It's easy to look at and see what zoning districts that use would be allowed in. We've done a lot of updating to the definitions, making it clear what is allowed, what's not allowed, and that way it leaves less room for interpretation. It also is just more user-friendly. It makes working with the code a lot easier. Also updating the sign ordinance. I know we'll probably talk a lot about that today. And then creating objective design standards.
So getting into some of the formatting that Amy was talking about, this is just kind of the jumping off point where we started from. So if you look on the left-hand side, your existing format had almost every topic broken down into different chapters, not quite organized under any particular heading. You had zone districts mixed in with different uses and things like that. So it made it challenging just to navigate the code alone. So the new proposed format is we sort of broke this down, chunked it out into easily more defined areas so that you can navigate your code a lot easier. So kind of the 4 main chapter sections we have here are 1, general provisions and procedures. You'll go to that to understand what's people's roles, responsibilities, what are the procedures? How do you go about an admin permit? How do you go about planning commission hearing level items? Chapter 2 is broken down into the zones. So you'll go there to find out, hey, I'm in a residential zone. What does that mean? What are my development standards? What are the uses in that zone? And then into use regulations, we're really getting into use specifics. So you're going to have things like mobile food trucks or different types of uses. And under that, you'll have more information about specific standards that are applicable to those uses. And then finally, citywide standards. These are the things that are like applicable citywide. So think about your parking regulations, your landscape standards, things that are going to be applicable across the city, not based on your use per se or based on your zone, but things that you would see across the board. So that was sort of the approach here. Simplify, just starting from the table of contents. How do we navigate the code? So that's one major point there. Going on to the next slide here. These are proposed summary tables. We haven't done the full deep dive to fully fill these out, but I wanted to represent them here so you had an idea of what direction we were heading and get some feedback from you as well. The table on the left is pretty self-explanatory. It's a decision-making bodies, and it identifies who's the recommended body, who's the decision-making body, and who where appeals would go to. This information was already in your code, but just in paragraph forms, and you would have to read through quite a bit of text to figure out what goes where. This simplifies things that allows you to see based on application type, who's the decision-making body, who's the recommending body, and where would an appeal go if that were to happen. So we find this to be a very useful tool just to have easily accessible. To your right, we've started to put together a summary table of allowed uses. With this, like Amy had mentioned, it would be helpful for folks reading the code, using the code, coming in to do business. I have this particular land use I'm interested in pursuing. I want to know if it's allowed in my zone district. So it's a really quick way to kind of go down a table of allowed uses and see where those uses can occur. Right now, one of the things we're looking at with the summary table, we have a lot of land uses listed here. Some of them are, maybe have some historical purpose. Some of them we might not really see that use come around very often. So maybe that's something we can kind of parse down that table list of allowed uses. Just something I wanted to share because, again, there's a lot there. We could keep it all, or we can try to kind of narrow in on some of those allowed uses. Again, a lot of this is historical from the old code, bringing it. And then moving on to improve definition.
So definitions are kind of essential to a zoning ordinance. It tells us what you can and can't do and defines what uses are allowed. So we spent a little bit of time into the diving into the definitions. Some of the definitions were additions to be consistent with state law. This is adding what an accessory dwelling unit is, what a junior accessory dwelling unit is, just to conform to state requirements. Those were added. Defining existing uses. If you were going through the list of permitted uses, there would be uses that didn't have a definition. So I was going through and clearing some of that up. It was like a music studio was listed as a use, but there was no definition. So just explaining a little bit more of what a music studio would be. There was doing some cleanup. Like as I dove into it, there was 3 definitions of a daycare center. So I cleaned that up and removed it. So that way there was 2. And one would be like a residential daycare where somebody's having a daycare out of their house. And then one would be more of a commercial daycare center. And also clearing it up a little bit because nowadays there have been daycares that open up for special needs adults or senior citizens. So allowing a little bit more flexibility if a business does come into the city for something like that. It's not just a daycare geared towards children. And then some clarification, like for example, fitness centers. I added a little bit more detail about what a fitness center could be and allowed a lot more flexibility with that. Right now, the code calls out martial arts facilities, health clubs, and dance studios, I think was the other one. Dance studios as 3 specific uses. And it's like fitness centers could be so much more than that. So it allows a lot more flexibility as trends kind of ebb and flow. Like right now, pickleball is a real big thing. So if somebody wanted to create a pickleball studio and come in, they would be able to do that under the fitness center definition. The sign ordinance. So spent a lot of time kind of noodling on this, and this is also part of the purpose of today is to kind of get your feedback of what we've done so far. So we've added some definitions to kind of clarify what specific signs are allowed and not allowed. Cleaned up the prohibited and exempt signage section. The exempt sign or the prohibited sign, I'm sorry. For example, there's a lot of text and a lot of language, and just kind of cleaning that up and just making it easy to see if you're to take a look at it, what is allowed and not allowed. There was a lot of text and redundancy, so removing some of that. But as I kind of noodled on it, I wanted to talk about keeping the bones of the sign ordinance. Like there is a lot of detail about if you are in a residential zoning district, how much signage, square footage are you allowed? If you're in a commercial zoning district, how much of that is you are allowed? And some of that is really good information. So maybe keeping some of that, but we can further discuss too. And maybe reformatting that, making it more user friendly. So.
Great. And then moving forward, one of a kind of a new proposed item that's added to the code is introducing this concept of new objective design standards. And essentially what that would allow is for a more streamlined approach to design review applications. So kind of current state today is the way that the code's written, it's almost any external modification to any kind of development. Typically, they get triggered into this architectural board of review, which generally goes to our planning commission who acts as that board. So it's oftentimes things that maybe are more minute or minutia are getting put into this higher level hearing level, which honestly, if we had standards outlined in code, that could be very much a staff level. And so what the introduction of objective design standards does, it's providing standards outlined in code. And based on what the project is, they can fall into a tier 1 staff level if they meet the objective design standards and the thresholds, meaning like footage, things like that. Or we're going to put them into a tier 2, which will go to the architectural board of review, i.e. the planning commission, to review for a larger level, let's say a major type of design review. So getting into that, we've kind of proposed just a jumping off point. Would really love to get some feedback on your thoughts and feelings about what feels good as a tier 1 versus what's going to trigger a tier 2. For example, right now we have things in a tier 1 calling it as a minor exterior addition alteration is a building under 2,000 square feet. So we've kind of put that threshold there. If you're over that 2,000 square feet and you want to do some kind of alteration, modification, we're going to kick you up to the next tier. Additionally, the architectural board of review is existing. We don't want to mess with that too much, but we did want to provide the objective design standards for you to kind of mull over. Additionally, what these introduction of design standards does is provides some more regulatory compliance. It kind of gets more into the state housing laws by providing these objective standards. We're taking away the subjective kind of review, which can get challenged. So essentially, if we outline these standards as it's not, I think this color is pretty, it's we have a set color palette of these things we can and cannot approve. Additionally, it provides predictability and certainty, especially for the developers. They can come in with expectations. Hey, it's in your code. I know this is what you're looking for, and this is what I have to provide. It also enhances project feasibility. So it reduces that back and forth and resubmittal. They come in knowing what needs to be on their plans and what, what's going to put them in which tier. It can help save some cost and feasibility on both the city and the developer. Additionally, this is a way to help community character be protected. It ensures development is compatible and consistent across different design review applications. And then getting into more the nitty gritty of sort of how we bucketed the design standards we're bringing forward. One is building articulation and massing. So that's talking about horizontal offsets, vertical articulation of structure, and roofline variation. This would come into play to help kind of reduce like box looking commercial type projects. So the idea is it's providing some character, some kind of architectural feature instead of, we'll just say like a big box store coming in with a flat facade and, no articulation on the building. This is now saying, hey, you have to come in and provide a little bit of detail here. Additionally, that moves us into materials and colors. Again, it kind of identifies what are the primary materials that we want to see, material changes based on the size and scale of the building, and also approved color palettes. So for instance, we don't want to see fluorescent, bright color necessarily as the main material and color. And then,
House hot pink.
what was that?
Can't paint the house hot pink, is what you're saying.
No, we're going to say, hey, but here's the thing. If you wanted to do that, now you're out of tier 1, you have to go to tier 2 to request to modify something outside of this color palette. So you could be creative. We don't want to stop, the creativity there, but it's going to be now a hearing level item to deviate from what we've said is acceptable.
Has to be a dull earth tone pink.
And then,
Sorry.
no worries. And then a couple other sections of design standards, site design and pedestrian access. This just makes some more deliberate ideas about connecting main entrance to sidewalks, making sure that there's some transparency on the facade. So number of doors and windows, you don't want to just walk past a 30-foot tall building that's all concrete for 100 feet. Additionally, this also talks about some parking screening. So for instance, if you have a big box store with a very large parking lot and you're driving along the street, you want maybe a little softness there. So we're providing, saying, hey, you need a 3-foot high hedge. You can't just have parking up against the sidewalk, up against the road. It just provides that requirement to, hey, have this level of design here, and it makes it more also pedestrian friendly.
And when I back my truck up to the curb, my bumper's not hanging out.
Exactly.
That makes
It's a
really
buffer,
good.
yeah.
It makes a lot of really good sense.
Yeah, the experience for both the people using the site and walking driving. And then identifying private and common open space. So this would be, for instance, like a multifamily project. We would say you need X amount of private open space per unit. So that could be like a balcony or a covered patio. And then we'd also identify common open space, which could be community amenities, but we want to see a certain amount of open space. So it's not just, a multifamily structure with no articulation on the building and no, community amenity or open or private space for the residents. And then we get into the lighting and utilities. This is mainly about shielding and screening. So it just helps solidify that we don't want light spillage over property lines. We also want to make sure the lighting is sufficient for safety. So it's kind of playing on both of those. And then utility screening, utilities are part of the development, but we do want to do to the best of our ability is screen those things. So again, these are just sort of a jumping off point. This is where we started, but if there are certain things here in the city of Willows that you're like, this is what our community character is, we can incorporate and implement that into your design standards to make those part of what we review. And then kind of going into sort of where we're at and next steps. The goal, the overarching goal here is to improve the clarity and ensure full consistency with your code with state law and your general plan. So that's the overarching goal we're trying to get to. Today, we're looking for feedback specifically to incorporate any specific changes or additions that you want to make sure you see in the draft. One way we suggest reviewing this is starting with that red line version. So you kind of have an idea of, hey, here's the existing format. Here's where you can kind of see those changes. And then going into the clean version of the code and kind of reading through that and seeing, hey, what feels like we need more, or we can take that out. That feels redundant. So start with the red line, move to that clean draft. And then today, we're here to record feedback. So we're going to take your verbal feedback, take note of that. And then if you have your own, red line version of the code that you want to give us, we would love to get that back from you. We would hope to get it by May 20th. So it gives you a couple weeks to kind of really get into it. And hopefully today's discussion will help you kind of focus in a little bit on what you want to provide us. But if we can get that feedback back, that'll give us enough time to incorporate modifications, changes. And then the idea is that we can come back individually once to the Planning Commission with a draft that you guys can feel really comfortable with. And then that would require a recommendation to the City Council. And again, City Council will be our final. And I will note too, like at that Planning Commission meeting where we're presenting the code, that you still have the opportunity to make those requested modifications, changes. So we're hoping to get most of it done at this workshop so that we could bring you a really nice clean version, but just know like it's not the final end all be all. You still have the opportunity in the Planning Commission meeting to make changes on. So with that, we didn't want to take too much time on the presentation, just want to hit the high notes and really leave enough time for kind of open forum discussion. I don't know, Joe, if you had ideas on how you wanted to go through it.
Any ideas on how I want to go through it, but the potential we could go through the different chapters and go around the table and see if people have recommendations to them, or we could go person by person, depending on what they want to say. Maybe hitting it chapter by chapter might be a good way to do it.
I know for me, I spent most of my time going through the red line version, seeing how code compared to how change compared to our current code, and then making the translation to looking at it in this format. I didn't quite get that far.
Yeah.
So I know for me, I that would be my kind of, I'm talking.
And that's great because it does show our work, show the chart changes that we're doing.
Yeah, likewise. I went through all 117 pages of the red line version.
A lot.
And it's a lot. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do this for a living, but anyway. And, yeah.
So I think we'll go section by section, and then if anybody has any changes to the sections, they can have an input on it. But we'll go based off the red line version, not the updated. Is that fair enough?
Correct.
Okay. This is your ladies' show. I'm gonna put you in charge of. You guys can decide where you want to start. Go from there. When you're ready to move on from there. That sound good?
Sounds good.
Sure.
All right. So first chapter, looking at our red line version, we're in 1805, purpose and effect of zoning plan. That was
Yeah.
okay. Anyone have comment on that?
Also, if it helps, there's page numbers at the top. So if we get lost, we can also reference that.
Jolene, right?
Delaney.
Oh, Delaney. How did I get? Well, I can't.
It's okay.
Jolene, that's someone else.
I like
Delaney.
Jolene though.
It's a nice name, Delaney. Delaney.
We listen to the song.
Yeah, probably. 80. Yeah, just to say thank you on that 18 and one of my pet peeves. Ridiculous backwards, you know, GC, CG and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
Thank you for changing that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember that from when we met last time. So
That-
I changed
that's
it
good.
just for you. Yeah.
God, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right, so I guess we're on, just to kind of get everyone on the same page, page 4, we are on 1810 designation and establishment of districts.
If we just look at the actual definitions, I noticed that entryway in the draft was still included. It wasn't lined out at all, but in the new one, it's gone.
Yeah.
So, and I know we had talked prior that because of the general plan amendment, that was kind of overlooked. And so is the entryway current zone on our zoning map, purposes of our, reading, is that under general?
Correct. It basically all converged under
I
general
was looking
commercial.
at this, anything we saw in entryway, we would be thinking if we want to see that in general.
Correct. Yeah,
That's for the full central or entry.
right.
And just to comment on that, would it be possible, even though the general plan is not referencing entryway, that we overlay a zone on the zoning map with that? Because central commercial is mentioned in the general plan, but the general plan map does not have the overlay. It's mentioned in the general plan, but it is not overlaid on the general plan map.
The entryway.
We were talking entryway, but the same is true for actual central commercial because we have a
Yeah, so central commercial in the general plan is discussed where entryway is not, but the map overlay on the general plan is not there. Yep.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to approach that. One is to create an overlay that would capture that. I think another tool at our disposal would be to, if it's specific to design elements that you want in the entryway, we can incorporate that into like objective design standards along a certain corridor. I mean, there's probably a couple ways we can do it.
Yep, just a thought on there. If we did have our historic downtown design guidelines also go into the entryway zone, so there's some backup there. But what maybe we'll do is go back and look at the intent of eliminating that through the general plan, see if it was to simplify or to keep some of the regulation and overlay it.
well, and some of my thoughts when we look at entryway, it was very specific in general commercial, and we can look at it when we get there, allows for residential uses. And so when we looked at the entryway, we did not want residential uses unless they were at least one parcel off of Wood Street. So we're going to lose those type of delineations. But I'll talk about my thoughts on residential and commercial.
So I think, and I'll go back and look at the general plan meetings on when that was discussed. Because there is a lot put into that entryway district, like Councilmember Pride just brought up. So I think it's getting it clarified and see if it was something that was missed or was directed to go away and where we go.
Well, I know I wanted to clarify that because personally, I'd want to go back and said I was on the city council, did entryway, and it was for really, and part of it was when people were coming off I-5 transition. We wanted that to be but we didn't want to lose residential look of it. So that's why it didn't allow drive-throughs. It didn't allow all the fast food flashy lights and stuff. So we wanted it transitional. So if we're just talking general commercial, that same thinking. So I think the hindsight though, I think whatever we have on there for lighting, put it more. So that's we street.
Okay, anyone else on the establishment of districts? Okay.
And just reference to Lori's comments, that entryway always is, I don't know, that needs to be updated somehow. It's always bothered me. It's currently opposed to the entryway. It's a good,
Modern.
absolutely. Need to- We need to modernize it. Of
Oh,
course, the whole thing needs to be modernized, and obviously that's,
But if it's all general, let me have general. also
You're
want
losing
under
something,
areas
yeah.
and right away. That are-
Yes, I think the key here is understanding, is it the design, is it design related features of the entryway we want to retain, or the uses, restrictions and allowed? So kind of maybe keep that in mind, is we like that it's commercial only, or we like the idea of having mixed use, commercial and residential with stricter design requirements. So thinking through how you want.
Well, and I think the intent at the time was that there would not be any new residential along there because of the difficulties in, you got housing trying to
Access,
go in and
yeah.
out on a state highway. But if it's commercial, again, what type of commercial do we want? So part of it could be use, I think, in terms of what uses do we want
Yeah.
along there. And then design would be some of that. I mean, you could have our whole thing all be, neon lights and fast food and whatever, or not. I mean, that's have to kind of play with going forward. I think that entryway went so far as to say no drive-throughs. I mean, that was one of those pieces.
it needs more flexibility. I don't know if that helps you.
Gives us a little
Yeah.
direction,
Yeah.
yeah.
Pretty general.
And then as mentioned, just to point out, the abbreviations were corrected just to make more sense there for the general commercial from from CG to GC to kind of align with the verbiage there. We also light industrial went to LI instead of MI, and heavy industrial HI instead of MH, just for common sense, like just easier to read and
It is common
comprehend.
sense,
It is
yeah.
common sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
You did a good job.
Correct. Okay. All right.
Ask a silly question.
Hmm.
Open space district. What is that? What are you doing capturing? Parks is
Correct. Yeah. Most of your things that are going to be designated open space are going to either be land that's for preservation and you don't want development on, or for like open space for parks, recreation, public use, that kind.
just an example on that. So currently when Basin Street came in, we've got an open space designation where that drainage retention goes through the middle of their industrial side. So it's basically just saying this is to remain open. If it's a public park, it'll be under the public facilities designation. So a retention pond basin has got that designation in between their residential and their industrial.
All right, we'll move on to chapter 18.15, which is the enforcement. We didn't talk about this during our presentation, but we did add a lot of suggestions that are redlined in this section about adding a little bit more teeth. I also reviewed this against the state laws and rules and regulations and pulled a lot of the language to make sure it was consistent with that.
I have some clarification questions.
Yeah.
So on page 7 of 117, in some of the red line versions where it's talking about the fines and first violations.
Mhm.
So there's a fine not exceeding $100 for a first violation, a fine not exceeding $200 for a second violation of the same ordinance within 1 year.
Mhm.
So is one violation, so say it's a planning violation and someone's a use that is not appropriate. So they have one violation, it's $100 fine, which honestly doesn't seem like very much. So if they don't correct that violation and they get another notice, is that a second violation? Or is that a continuation of the first violation and not complying with the first violation?
Mm.
Because my question is, if someone
Yeah.
is non-compliant they're given a notice.
Mhm.
At what point does the fine, I mean, you're given a notice, do you get a fine immediately?
Right.
But then if they're not doing corrective action and it drags on for how many months do some of them drag on? You know, what are the penalties for not complying? What are the teeth that we can actually bring to bear? And so then say they correct it, and then we go back 3 months later and they've signed off, they've corrected the issue, but now there's a second I mean,
Mhm.
so to me,
Yeah.
continuing to notice them is not new violations, it's a continuation of the first violation. They haven't corrected it. So I didn't see where this was very helpful
Mhm.
using like a real life example
Yeah.
that we're going through.
Yeah.
And the fines that we've been doing are way more than what I saw anywhere in our code, unless those are other code sections that aren't.
Yeah, so the code enforcement abatement fines are up to $500 a day. And my thought is I would like to marry, if we can legally do that for the planning violations to where until this is corrected, we're assessing a fine of up to this a day and get rid of the infraction and misdemeanor language because nobody's determining that.
You know, and for anyone listening, it's not intended to be punitive, but when we have a situation where someone starts a use in an area that isn't zoned for it, it's creating a hardship for neighbors. It's affecting residential values potentially. It's creating a real problem. So when the city goes to that entity who maybe didn't know, we need you to correct it. If they don't and they're only charged $100, why should they change anything, right? It's only $100.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so to me, if we're talking teeth and the way to make people pay attention, and our intention of doing this isn't to be the mean city people. The intention is with zoning, we have certain areas where we want certain things to be and we want things to look a certain way. And the code is how we do that. So if someone's not complying with that, education's always our first step, which will be a step when this is all done.
Mhm.
But if people aren't complying and aren't correcting it, we need to have the ability to have some teeth.
Yeah. And a lot of this language that you do see, I pulled from state code just to kind of get the starting blocks.
Yep.
So if we're talking about adding more teeth and using other code sections, we can definitely kind of marry things together.
So I think if this one could be just some extra work
Yep.
that we do, and I think you get what I'm saying, Joe.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we've done the building code side of it to eliminate some of those misdemeanor and infractions because nobody's making those calls an actual law enforcement issue, whether it's a misdemeanor action and we're not going through judicial trials. So we want to move to more administrative fines. And that way we're not having to go through that whole process of the court. And just one other comment I had too, and it would be a lot less than what you would see on the building side, but something about being able to recoup staff time in addition to the fines for their work to correct this issue.
Mhm.
Like we would an abatement enforcement kind
Right.
of thing.
The other kind of general question I had is we're looking at penalty provisions in Title 18. Middle of the page on page 7, section C, notwithstanding any other law, a violation of local building and safety codes.
Mhm.
So we're in the planning code here, but we're talking about building codes and safety codes.
Yeah.
Is that the purpose of this code, or is that also handled in our titles that talk about building codes and fire codes? And should we make a nexus to those things? Obviously, we're going to be looking at consistency across all titles. But, to me, we should be looking specifically in Title 18 at planning, zoning type violations.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was added in anywhere, and sometimes planning and building.
Well,
There's-
and it's kind of a question because I don't
Yeah.
really know either. So it's just something to ask the question. Is it focused on?
Yeah, but my thought would be keep them separate. We robustly went over the code enforcement piece on the building side and establishing that. So keep it.
Right by reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be,
It's not a bad idea, but it doesn't need to spell it out again for sure.
yeah.
Well, I agree with those comments. I read this penalty provisions and it is convoluted.
Mhm.
The fines aren't nearly enough. I mean, down toward the
Yep.
higher fine, $100, $130.
My question.
A haircut costs, $30 now. So, but it was convoluted reading that with the infraction with the misdemeanor. I mean, as far as, I've been in the criminal law business for a long time and it was convoluted reading. It was difficult. But I'd recommend a cleanup of somehow on there. And, you know, sure, obviously we're going to need misdemeanor violations, for serious abatement issue. So we have some teeth, but that needs to be clear. You know,
So in regards to this section, is there a warning? I mean, I don't see it spelled out. So is that what, say, a warning first, like?
Well, it's on page 6, kind of. I was going to point that out. There's time limits for corrections.
Mhm.
So it says the notice of violation shall state that violation shall be corrected within 30 days from the date of a notice to avoid further enforcement action. And that can be extended, but it doesn't really say what happens if you don't comply.
I mean, yeah, it states a time limit for correcting a violation, but it's still a violation. Be the initial $100. So do we want to put in there, giving you a 30-day notice or a 60-day notice? After that, you receive your first violation at X number of dollars.
And then if you still haven't complied,
And
you
then
know,
it doubles, however you format that to give it some more.
mhm.
And honestly, as far as staff time goes, though I know you kind of mentioned staff time, I'd like to see that built into the fine value. You know, instead of it being, hey, we're going to ding you for this $300 on this first violation, but since we gave you a warning and we're doing a violation, have 16 hours of staff time built into that. Throwing out a number.
Mhm.
Right? 9 of those hours we're probably doing. So I think by the time we get to the violation point, just keep that in violation. So then it's easier to reach. That makes sense.
Yep.
Because then
It
it's
does.
not, hey, we had 3 hours from the chief, 2 hours from community development director, and 2 hours from planning. I think if we say, hey, first violation is going to be $400, but that's going to include staff time. Or maybe it needs to be more because maybe it needs to be $600. First one, start doubling because you're going to have to keep.
That's
do
the
it.
goal. Yeah. Good.
So, and I understand like the initial one would probably be have the most hours spent into it because that's your initial review. Else, where maybe the second one is just like I'm going in and only checking for these 2 certain.
Yep.
Okay, and then the third one's I'm only checking for this one, so it's not as much staff time when you get to the second or third violation. But I'm just when I think of that, I'm thinking ease on your part, right? On the
Yep.
city's part of saying, I got to make up this bill for this person. I have to go around and track where all these hours were spent at.
And I agree 100% with that too, that we should have some limit on it because it's extra, it'll cost us more to do it on small stuff than we'll get out of it. And the only thing like that I want that in there for is when we're trying to go after somebody and it's 7 months and we've now spent so many hours back and forth. So I think it needs to be at the end of it. And what we have to, the other thing to be careful about is when we do the staff time, it's got to be billed with actual time with receipts. So the fine needs to be completely separate. But if we get somebody going on for an extended period of time, maybe just saying have the ability to. I know discretion's never good, but something like that. But I agree. First violation, second, but maybe when it gets to the third, then staff time may be included.
yeah, you raise the fine to whatever that
Yeah,
medium.
but we
number
have to
is.
bill out staff time. Yeah.
It's
Third
But
one.
honestly, if you're doing that, I mean, the first violation, you're talking $500 start line,
Yeah.
not 100.
No, right,
Ah.
exactly.
And the third one, you're starting to get. But that's just my suggestion when it comes to that part.
No, absolutely. I
Agree.
100% agree. It doesn't make any sense to be spending more staff time creating a bill on some kind of a minor violation. It's just silly.
So
Yeah.
I just think exactly what everybody's saying, but I think if we're going to put teeth, then we have to be able to enforce it. And so we have to make sure that we have somebody that is out there enforcing it.
Mhm.
So a lot of times we get complaints about, you sit on Facebook. The weeds is the last thing I saw on Facebook, all the tall grass. So we need to be able to afford to have somebody actually do it if it's going to be in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
And so
has to be a priority.
the way that it operates now is complaint driven because we don't have the money to go have somebody drive around and
Right.
actively look. If they run into them, great. But on we don't get nearly as many planning side code violations, obviously, that we do the building side of it. But when they come, we've just had a recent example of this and it took a while to go. And now this code enforcement or my time or staff's time's getting eaten up, writing emails, monitoring their situation. So it shouldn't be the burden of the taxpayer to pay for that person's mistake. And that's where I get into the staff time once it gets to a certain point. I think what Mayor Hudson said, I think you guys agreed with when we get to that third violation. Just a line that says staff time may be included on top of violations.
Do we have enough staff to stay on top of
We did
these
with,
things right now?
we did the food bank. That's been the one and only real planning piece that we've done, to be honest. So they are few and far between on code enforcement, and our new inspector and code enforcement officer is great to work with the planning side of it. It's more our internal staff, and we do have a new permit tech we just recently hired. So yes, hiring that new permit tech for us her focus is a lot on that. Yep.
So a follow comment on that, it's going to be a common thread on some of my notes, is we're talking about issuance of CUPs, administrative permits, variances. A lot of my notes are, how are we tracking those? Because they say if a use isn't completed within a year, if a use is terminated for a year, it goes away. So unless we keep track somewhere of all of our variances and when they started, then even if someone complained, it's hard to go back and find out, well, when did that start? So I know we have new technologies, but as we're issuing new stuff, particularly having a mechanism for tracking so that we know because it's easy to say in the code, oh, well, after a year, if you haven't started it, it's expired. Okay, are we tracking that? Are we creating the mechanisms to stay on top of that?
Another question I have for you too is when it says first violation, are we talking this is a charge per violation, or is it going to be a charge for this business had 3 violations? So they received this one letter, so now they're getting $100 first violation ding, even though they have 3 things. Or is that's going to be 3 separate? I don't know if that's really spoken to.
No, I don't think we have.
Yeah,
To that.
if you have input on how you would prefer, like per violation or per case, by one code enforcement case that's dealing with the 3 items, I'm not sure they get separate tracking.
On the other side of it with code enforcement, it's a fine up to $500 per day, I believe, per violation. I'm coming off the top of my head with that though. But yeah, so if they've got 7 violations, and that's the ability to up to. So it's not set in stone that that's what they get hit with.
Well, and I kind of like the idea of having it the up to, and say you did have a business owner or a project that had multiple code violations. So it's one entity, but multiple violations. Our ability to charge up to says, gee, entity, you're in violation of 4 items. We could charge up to $2,800. But because, it gives us some flexibility to then work with them and come down, as opposed to being the other way and not being, So that might be a way to frame it that gives us the flexibility to play hardball if we need
Yeah, you
to,
gotta
but can be flexible if the situation
Yeah,
warrants.
you got to make sure that flexibility language is in there.
Yeah, up to 500 per day per violation at the discretion.
And then we'll read it when you put it back in a draft and go, wow. So really quick on page 8, because it's still this section. So it's item C in the middle of the page where it talks about approval authority. So I had a question on this, but this is where that new table that you've proposed allows us to go back. So if it was a conditional use permit, I went, oh, who was the approval authority? We'd go back and go, oh, that was the planning commission. So that's who it goes back to. I like that because when I was reading through this, I didn't really get the table. So that answers a lot of questions. Yeah. I like that.
So that's essentially if the planning commission appoints it, it goes back to you. If for some reason it comes to the council, it's back to
It's just easy to go back and look and say, who was the approving authority? Oh, that's very cool.
This font is.
I know.
I know that color's.
Yeah.
Mine's red. Copy.
I just wanted to ask a quick question, Delaney and Amy, about whether or not when there's discretion in the code around enforcement fees and penalties, it seems like to me it would make sense to have some sort of logic that we're using to decide that discretion, because without it, obviously it becomes precedent setting. And so I didn't hear much discussion about that. I don't know if you have some thoughts on how there could be logic applied when there's one property with 5 violations and now you've decided we won't do 500, we'll do 250, or, I mean, I don't know that it's such a great idea to just have us, shoot from the hip and fall shot. I don't usually like that myself, to not have guidelines. So do you have any thoughts on what other cities do or around that kind of thing?
I think a lot of places there's a spectrum here for sure, because you don't want to say, the weed abatement person getting $500 fine shouldn't correlate to the person who has an unsafe building with the public being able to enter, right? Like that's a different kind of violation. I mean, we can come up with some suggested language and let you guys mull it over. I think I've seen a spectrum of a set fee, based on the violation, or the up to is helpful and as a tool for like negotiating and trying to get people to, because at the end of the day, you want them to correct. You're not just trying to hit them with the fee to hit them with the fee. You want the thing resolved. So you just want to have enough play there to utilize that. But
I mean,
hear
if
what you're
it
saying.
interests the council to come up with some sort of way to measure and make that decision, I would like to see it as an administrator, because I don't really like the idea, because, if somebody gets one thing and then somebody learns about it and they go, well, you did that for them, why can't I get the same kind of deal? I worry about that kind of
Yeah.
thing happening.
So two thoughts I have. One is these specific violations we're talking about are relevant to Title 18. So I'm assuming there's also going to be violations talked about in the building code and violations talked about in the weed abatement area. And they'll all transition back to our master fee schedule at some point. So whether they all have to be the same, I think when you hear, I mean, it may not be a weed, or maybe I heard you go, the weed abatement violation may be less onerous than a CUP violation or something like that. And the other thing is maybe the discretion isn't that we're going to charge you less than 500 per violation. The discretion is you had 7 violations, but we're only going to charge you for 4. So there's 2 different ways to look at it. The value of the violation, or saying 2 of the violations were very similar. So,
Yeah.
I think that would be easier to some guidelines for, as opposed.
If it could be handled 2 ways. Again, I'm going to agree with Marty on not having to pick a fine or do those kinds of things. Takes away the liability on the city side of somebody coming back and say, hey, this was similar, but you charged him this. Good faith effort. Again, with the food bank, what we went ahead and did was paused the fines and gave them 2 months, understanding that they had to find a new place to rent. So we paused fines for them, said, if you alleviate this in 60 days, we will clear them. So we try to work with people on situations with code violations. We see it a lot where people don't have money to clean their grandpa died and they've got a house that's a mess, right? So we extend those through the code enforcement side and give them leeway. When we see that there's no effort being made or the situation continually isn't being cleaned up, is when we get more aggressive with the fines too.
I think
Which
when,
is what
when
they're
people
for.
are making progress, we will stop and suspend. We also did that with the modular trailer up the road. Once they pulled permits, we stopped with the fining. So I think that that kind of discretion makes a lot of sense to allow us to be able to suspend any further penalties. I just worry when there's multiple ones, when we're just, if staff just gets to sort of have the discretion to decide, oh, I like this person, or I like your project, or, it's just, I would want to be really careful. Because it can become a problem if other people in the community learn about it and they find themselves in what they perceive to be a similar situation, but it might not really be because they don't know all the details. then people start pointing fingers and saying, why aren't I getting the same kind of discretion?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah.
Uh,
Well, no, we have to be fair. We just have to be fair, but so I might be able to save 2 hours here. I was kind of hoping that you'd come up. I mean, I don't think we have to sit here and reinvent the wheel on every fine and every issue and every warning and all this stuff. Aren't there some best practices, some common sense best practices?
I mean, I think that's what
Somewhere in
we
the state that,
here with the up to 100, then 200, then 500. If that doesn't feel like enough teeth, though, that's where we're.
well, I'm
thinking.
talking about not only that, we need about, I'm just talking about the generalities altogether. You know, fairness, right? Enforcing the law, and this is law, local law, ordinance, fairly and evenly with built-in flexibility. Aren't there some best practices out there that you've
Yeah.
seen that you could put together for us?
Yeah, I think absolutely we can come up with kind of assess current, and I think that's what was sort of an attempt here, but getting into the fairness part too, as well, like with the flexibility built
Sure.
in, finding that sweet spot and
Right.
not reinventing the wheel, going with, newly adopted.
And you have somebody, obviously we go in the team and already people that are just non-compliant, period.
Right.
That's when you need the real teeth.
Yeah.
But you also need the flexibility for individuals trying,
Exactly.
right?
This has been like a valuable discussion for us to kind of work with.
I mean, it's a good
So-
discussion, but I mean,
Yeah.
we could seriously be here till 8:30 talking about, $106 for this and
Right.
$79 for this.
Right.
Well, to kind of incorporate all that into one, do we have to do a first violation? First notice, second notice, third notice, or can we do time? So for example, it says this violation, you're going to be charged $150 per day for violation. Well, it's fixed for the first 30 days. After 30 days to 500 exceeds 60 days, it's going to go. Is there a possible way to do that, or am I off thinking? Really want flexibility. Huh?
Flexibility.
There is in that it puts it on them to keep the fines lower for themselves. If that makes more sense. They reach out and put something in there that says, hey, if they reach out in X days, have the conversation with us, we may be able to extend that time frame. First phase, second. And I don't know if that saves you guys time on having to put out extra notices or anything like that, or
No, I think that's something that again, you're someone to bring up the food bank because it's only planning when I've got to go off of, but a 30-day, and you're talking more of just reach out to us with the plan, and then we can come up with because getting a new place, these planning ones are really do take longer, I think, usually because somebody's going to move a business, they're going to do something, but get a response in 30 days, and then we'll work on using words of a reasonable timeline for you to execute getting out of here,
like,
something like that.
for example, my house that I'm market, weeds got super tall. I had to get my son to finally go on because when I talked to the lawn guy to go take care of it, it was going to be 30 days for. Okay, so if I received that notice 15 days ago, got a hold of the guy. Okay, my notice says he'll be there in 30 days. You guys just give me that time frame, get him. We'll add it to his regular schedule. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That would be my flexibility in there, saying, hey, there's actually proof of contract here that's gonna make sure this problem's fixed versus, oh yeah, I promise I'll get to it.
And I again, it's the basing what we have written and the flexibility. I think that is a good idea because especially with the planning piece of it, it's different, right? Are we kicking Walmart out, or are we telling somebody, hey, you can't operate selling your baked goods out of your house? So the ability to have that flex, and Walmart's going to go, well, 30 days, that's not going to work. But then saying 30 days to respond with a action considered administratively or something like that.
Yeah, I think we got it.
Moving on.
Yeah, we can
got it.
definitely.
With that, before I move on, I do want to state that Matt Busby did arrive at the meeting in attendance at 6:24.
Good job.
Thank you and sorry for being later.
I think I'm supposed to.
Good job. Did you bring snacks?
I'm a bad.
See how he is?
All right, then we'll go ahead and you took note of that. And again, if you have more specific notes or recommendations, feel free to incorporate that to your notes back to us. All right, going on to chapter 1820, we're on page 10. This is about amendments. Not much was touched here. We did add a clarification on 10 calendar days. But does anyone else have comments?
The only comment I had, and it's common throughout, is where it references in .020, item 2, a filing fee as established by city council resolution. My thought was we were trying to get everything on the master fee schedule, so maybe just some reference to the master fee schedule, and then all fees that are referenced. We don't have to go looking for the city council resolution for the fees. So it could still maybe say that, but then reference the master fee schedule so that people know where to go look. You guys are sitting in a really bad spot now that the sun
It's
is.
okay.
It'll pass.
It'll pass.
Did you see the light?
It found me.
Isn't that terrible? Marty's working on that.
Okay. All right. So 18.25 is about definitions. There's several pages to this, but we can kind of work our way through it. You have a lot. Okay.
Well, so just in general, one of my comments was, so rooming houses, boarding houses, and lodging houses.
Yeah.
Are those a thing anymore? Because they have very similar definitions. And the definition of, for example, a boarding house, it's a building or a portion thereof, other than a hotel, where regular meals for 3 or more persons are provided for compensation. It doesn't even talk about anybody sleeping there.
Mm.
So it's just a little restaurant in someone's house. So to my mind, as we're cleaning up an old code, I'm just wondering if we have some definitions in here that we just need to get gone.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure about that one. I've only seen one boarding house in my 10+ year career. So they're not very frequent. I didn't know if you had any here, but if not, we can definitely, that could be something.
Well,
we could quickly.
they're not called boarding house.
Yeah. So that's something that we can
So,
definitely like
Yeah,
remove.
so I say boarding house, rooming house, lodging house, to me, probably could go away. Because
Okay, just real quick before we go to that, on the housing, the boarding house, I want to make sure one that oh. Make sure that it doesn't violate any California housing laws, that we don't acknowledge them. And then what we could do is instead of having separate,
Hey, Rick, if you pull them forward, it should take them out of the light.
Yeah.
Push them back,
Let's go
kind of hit them again.
Yeah. Let's go with that. There you go.
there we go,
There you go.
and we're in the middle.
that's right.
Another way to address that is if we pick one, it's the boarding house and the lodging house, just kind of incorporate those by reference under one
That would be
definition.
Fine, if it's required to be there, but
Yeah,
I just
that's
wonder
the
if
only
these
thing I
just
would want to
old.
clarify.
Well, and I think we have all these new definitions too, that now we have group dwellings, transitional housing, supportive housing. And for me, I kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about maybe the differences in those. Because I know I keep going back and reading the definitions when I was looking at the zoning districts. So I don't want to jump ahead. We could go alphabetically, but we started with boarding house, so.
Okay, great. And then agency was brought up.
Well, I could see where you think of a government agency could be an office, but are they a commercial establishment in which goods, material, or equipment are received? I didn't really see any reference in reading through the whole code, any reference to agency anywhere. I didn't read every word, but it's pretty close.
Move on to the C's definition.
So definition of civic club, a nonprofit or not-for-profit organization
It's a little,
versus tax exempt.
Yeah.
I mean, are those the same? Are we just talking that they have to be some sort of nonprofit entity to be considered a civic?
yeah. Like I was kind of thinking of like a moose club. Yeah, Moose Lodge. Yeah.
Well, and the reason I kind of ask is because we have
Yeah.
more and more of our organizations that are forming nonprofits.
Mhm.
So the Lamb Derby is a nonprofit. I mean,
Mhm.
so they're entities, you
Mhm.
know. So when we talk about a civic club,
Mhm.
is that Lions Rotary? Is that the Willows Lamb Derby, the Car and Bike Show? Is that anybody who's a nonprofit organization that does all those things?
Mhm.
Which it's a definition.
Mhm.
Or if they were going to use well, I'm thinking use. These definitions can also apply to uses, not just ownership of buildings. So they might want to rent a building and then they're a civic club using it. So then it would go back to what's their use. So I guess, has there been an issue that we put this definition in here? Is it just what other people are?
No, so I noticed that in like the central commercial zoning district, for example, civic clubs was already listed as a
Okay,
use.
so then we defined it.
Yeah, so it's nice to have a definition of it. But for example, like in the central commercial zoning district, it's listed as a conditional use. So somebody would need a conditional use permit.
So that would be if the Elks Lodge wanted to go somewhere or what used to be the Monday Afternoon Club across the street.
Yeah, it used to be several lodges.
Yeah.
Masonic Lodge, we had other fraternal organizations here. Now there's the Elks off my head, but I mean, I think it's relevant.
Okay, because they could be just renting a building to do their organizational
Mhm.
thing. Okay.
Yep.
But is nonprofit, not-for-profit, tax exempt? Those are all interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
I want to jump back. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Slow one through. On A, I noticed it's in two different sections. Accessory dwelling unit has a really similar, almost exactly the same secondary dwelling unit.
Mm-hmm.
And I also noticed that automobile service station has a very similar definition to just service station. So I think there's a lot of redundancy in some of the definitions. I think if we're cleaning it up and we clean up where those phrases are being used, they're swap them all out for one use and then clean up our definition.
Yeah.
That way we, instead of having 200 definitions.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's just something that I'm starting to kind of notice going.
Yeah.
So
And I was combing through it and trying to find them, and yeah,
yeah, I mean,
this
it's
is
like,
helpful to find.
Mid-rise,
Yeah, fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Look at it.
like
Yeah.
we'd have residence and dwelling.
Mhm.
It says residence, says see dwellings. I don't know if there's a situations where we do something similar to that.
Yeah, combining
Rather
the
than-
definitions under automobile service station also referenced as service. That time together
And
and
then-
have one.
And then adding in like Tesla, like EV charging
Charging
stations and some
Mhm.
of the definitions of service stations.
Mhm.
Yes.
Gas station would be nice.
Yes. You know, like because electrical charging requires different capacity than other stuff does.
And I don't think we have a clean definition for fueling station because in the automobile service station, it's linked more towards repair and wash and this, not necessarily fuel. So
But somewhere it talks about a service, somewhere it talks about you can have fueling in one of the
With that.
definitions.
It
yeah.
does. It says it in actually.
Yeah.
I swear.
No,
Yeah,
there are some
service
definitions.
station says
Fueling
and-
vehicle. This is fueling a motor vehicle.
electric
Right.
vehicle, right?
page 12 is the automobile one, and then the service station one is on page 18.
Yeah, okay.
And does the ADU really replace secondary dwelling? Is that just the more current language for a secondary unit?
Mhm.
So we
Yeah.
could, so if we got rid of secondary, and I just know there's some place in
Yeah.
here where we still talk about a second dwelling unit, we just haven't caught it yet.
Definitely.
The secondary dwelling is right above service station.
Mhm. Yep.
And I can say SD, AD. All right, we were on C as in Charlie. Notice.
So on page 13, and this is one that wasn't changed also, it's language under conditional use. So it says conditional use means a use subject to a use permit. Such use shall be permitted when all, and I highlighted all, specific additional restrictions are completed and permanently satisfied in conformance. So if a use is permitted when all of their conditions are completed, then they shouldn't be operating until they have all of their completed. I think we often have use permits that they have conditions, but they're not necessarily all completed before they're doing something. So I just wondered if that all is a bad word to have there, or is that how we actually want to do things?
I'm trying to think like there can be conditions that are sort of the ongoing regular maintenance, ongoing
Right.
conditions. And I think that kind of addresses that part of it in the second sentence or in the last sentence. Use will remain conditional so as long as the permit requirements are complied with. So that'd be like complying with ongoing conditions. Sounds like you're saying there might be conditions to, let's say, do some kind of on-site improvement and they haven't completed that condition yet. However, they're operating. I mean, I don't know.
I
If
just
that's
was
common
like I said,
occurrence that conditions aren't satisfied before like a building permit is issued or a business license is issued.
I won't speak to anything previously, but currently we would make sure all those conditions are satisfied.
I don't want
prior
to spend a lot of time on that, and I'll see if I can separately come up with a
Okay.
different example.
We move on to D as in dog or Delta.
I know for dwelling means a design for and intended to be occupied by a family or families. So then I had to go to a definition of family because not all people are related to each other when they live in a home. So then family is defined as all persons living in a household.
Mhm.
It can include, but is not limited to those who are related by birth, marriage, or adoption. So a family is anybody living in a dwelling unit per the family definition.
Correct. And that one got a little dicey when I was like looking at state law and court hearings that have been.
There's another place where I have a question because of the family definition and
Okay.
wording, but I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I thought about deleting it, but then I didn't know if that would make it even more dicey. So I try to make it more inclusive.
Which is good because you don't want to be living.
Page 14.
So when you have the definition of a dwelling, I mean, is that essentially something?
I don't think that might be one we can actually delete. I would think that's maybe referencing like two homes on one site. So the dwelling group could be essentially like your main single family house and the ADU, and you're referring to both as a dwelling.
But then later in some of the code, it defines dwelling group somewhere in here as multiple houses. Well, then it's about setbacks specifically. So it's actually specifically referenced.
Yeah.
I don't remember where exactly.
There's group dwellings, which is referenced in the high density residential, which also has a
Okay.
definition in here.
Yeah.
We can investigate that one a little bit and see if it's a necessary definition or if it needs to actually have more language to define it.
Well, because to me, it's group homes. How is that different than transitional housing or supportive housing? And why? I mean, it was in there for a long time. Dwelling
Mhm.
group has been in our code for a long time. So is that a relevant term anymore now that we have those other more
Right.
current terminologies?
Mm-hmm. And then that's also a use that's further defined or listed in the code.
Yeah, we've got a lot of interesting parcels within the city limits of Willows. So I looking at dwelling group, off my head, a number of them pop into my head. They're out there.
Well, so the,
I think it's relevant to be included in the code.
well, so the group dwelling definition is the one where it says it means a group of more than 5 persons that are not constituting a family, sharing a nonprofit,
Hmm.
single dwelling unit and common housekeeping facility. So they can't be a family, but a family's designed as just 5 or more people who are living together. Does that mean it has to be fewer than 5 people? Family definition. I mean, when you start reading it, it's like, what does this mean? But that's better. But that's why I said, how are they? And if they're the same, then let's come up with a definition. And
I read the group dwelling as more of like a communal living situation.
just because people want to, but here it says it's sharing a nonprofit single. So does a nonprofit has to be an entity? So I guess they could form a nonprofit to have a communal house.
That'd be
Is that a
making sure you're not sure. Profit.
you can do under another definition somewhere. The definitions honestly were the biggest thing to go through them and then you're starting to read the code and you're going, okay, well, what does that mean? So thank you for all your work on this because it makes you think.
This also is helpful to me because I spend a lot of time sitting through this and you're finding new things that I did not catch. Move on to page 15, definitions.
That's where the group dwelling.
And then should we move on to page 16?
So a junior accessory dwelling unit, because this was kind of a new term for me. So an accessory dwelling unit is one that's detached from the main principal residence. So the junior means a unit that is no more than 500 square feet in size and contained entirely within a single family residence. How is that different than someone just having a mother-in-law unit? Or, why is this a new thing as opposed to just the interior of someone's home having space for separate space? Is it a state? I mean, is this a new
Yeah.
state thing? I'm just curious what's the reason for that? Is it
It allows you to have the separate facility. So
to rent?
to rent, but like two kitchens in one house.
You
We'd have to
normally
dif-
can't have 2 kitchens in one house?
Correct. Well,
Yeah, you could.
you could,
Yeah.
but typically it's basically it's a way to add housing. Let's say you didn't have room on your property to add the ADU.
Mhm.
This would allow you to convert something to your house or add on to your house. A unit under 500 square feet as a separate unit. It could be separately rentable or separately lived in. It just defines it as its own unit within the house.
And that
Or
is
an
the state
ADU
law,
would be
right?
just-
We have no
Yeah.
control over what,
Yeah.
so we got a
Yeah.
letter saying you need to update your
I just-
ADU codes.
I'm just curious, the permit requirements. So if I'm pulling a building permit
Mhm.
to add on a bathroom, it's interesting that I can't possibly do a second kitchen if I wanted to do a second. Would it require a separate meter?
Correct. I mean, I don't know how
If
buildings.
it's on a
are.
junior, that would be difficult. You'd have to redo all the wiring in your house to have a separate meter.
It
I
would
like I said,
allow,
I
I
just-
think it would allow for the second address,
If you're one unit,
at least to,
you have to have a separate entrance.
I don't know. I don't know if the state
It's
requires that.
it's a state requirement.
Yeah,
I'll let
yeah.
it go. But I was just trying
Yeah.
to figure out the relevance to us as a city, how we're permitting it or managing it.
Essentially, by identifying this, what we're saying is you could have a single family home, a junior ADU within that single family home, and a separate ADU. So one lot can now support 3 units by state code. And I think that's the important part there.
And is that the max in an R1 would be the 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well,
And you,
I don't know what the state has.
yeah, I
Got
want to say
to.
for sure 3. There has been, I got to read through SB 9 again. There's mention of another variation of.
So does the junior ADU,
A way to limit that?
the
Because I don't want
three.
I don't want every house in town to all of a sudden be like, oh, this is a rental. Oh, I can turn
No,
it to
it's the
30.
state of California.
If I had a house and I wanted to do an ADU and I wanted to have a junior ADU, do we still have to comply with our max lot coverages and all of our setbacks and everything? Or does this also change up that?
I
Because
think-
that starts to get to where it's a real neighborhood change. I mean, I
Right.
know it's state code, but
Yeah.
the implications are that everything's going to get more dense. Our R1 isn't R1 anymore.
Right.
That's my-
Yeah. And I think the state does have provisions around what is allowed and what's not allowed to be calculated into that lot coverage calculation. And they also have specific setbacks related to attached or detached accessory dwelling units.
So we'll look at the districts, but then do the districts under other requirements state anything to that effect that these, restrictions are not subject to ADU and GU or?
It
that
would just be
something-
referenced in the ADU section instead of trying to put that everywhere. It's
Everywhere,
like if you're
got it.
coming in for the ADU, we know that this has its own set of development standards, essentially that overrides your base zone. I want to say, like, for example, I think your side setback can go down to like 4 feet. If you had like an existing, let's say, detached garage you want to convert, and maybe it's non-compliant, like it's been there since the 30s, there, even if that's a non-compliant structure, setbacks are going to allow you to not have because the structure. So there's a lot of nuance there. You're not the only jurisdiction. It's statewide.
Move on. Page 17.
So one of the things I noticed is there is no massage anywhere except for in the adult business entertainment.
Hmm.
And I know we have a massage therapist office downtown, and I think we have a couple home occupations for massage. So I just thought we need to put massage somewhere because it's a therapeutic, it's a medical, it's other.
Good point. Sometimes those come in as like personal services. I know we have professional office. We can look at what the
Yeah.
common practices and group it, sort of like esthetician and other.
Skin. And then meeting facilities was a new use added to central commercial, but there wasn't really a definition of meeting facility.
Yeah. Also, I might have added the meeting facility while I was kind of working and it didn't get
Well, and there's
removed.
one down there now in downtown. So it's
Mhm.
good to, and parking issues with the meeting facility, the hours of operation for a meeting facility, when are there extra parking in our exempt park zone that doesn't have a lot of parking spaces? So that's why I was curious about the definition. And then I'm sure under mobile home and manufactured home, these definitions are probably from state code. But does anybody actually go and measure the square footage of anything excluding the bathrooms and the closets and the everything? It just seemed kind of archaic.
Mhm.
Question. Yeah. So
Mhm.
speak into the microphone. But the meeting facilities allowed downtown and event center. I guess you could allow one downtown if it met all the parking and size requirements and everything. It'd be a draw. Meetings versus events.
Yeah, we can add that.
Okay, so pay, and if you guys want me just to send my comments later, I will, but under, I'm sorry. Well, nuisance is a new definition that's
It
added,
is,
and it
yeah.
just means anything that is injurious to health or indecent or offensive to the senses. How is that defined? Anyway,
I pulled that from, there's another section in the code about nuisances. And yeah, that was that language, but
I just thought that would be interesting.
I think we've got code on nuisance that in the building code. and your right to enjoy your property with smells, things of that nature. We get code violations about it. And I think nuisance at the end of the day is going to be broadly defined, depending on what you believe is your right to enjoy your property versus your neighbor's right to, if you're a vegan, they're barbecuing a hamburger. You know, can come up. So, and they do. Sorry, Dylan.
Page 18 of definitions. Yeah.
It's just professional office means low intensity business, which isn't defined. And just some of the examples we have, like geologists, but we don't have real estate or insurance, which is very common. So I just thought maybe if we're changing it and adding it, the current examples of professional.
Yeah. I had pulled those specific uses because they were found later on in the zoning ordinance and they were specifically cited. So I was kind of like, let's try to make this a little bit cleaner. And so I took out all of those, threw them into the definition. We can definitely expand upon it.
So when we say drugless practitioners, would that be?
Could be.
It could be.
We could also,
That
That might be a good example
be a
to
separate
because
definition.
I'm have a license.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, also think of like a nail salon or something like that too, can maybe fit into this definition. So we can,
or other businesses requiring certifications or licenses that are similar to the above mentioned.
I mean, when I see
something like that.
drugless practitioners, I think chiropractor. But
Mhm.
then I'm thinking
Yeah.
chiropractic office have massage therapists or
Mhm.
this one, stick with 1,000.
I-
That one.
yeah, we could expand upon that,
Yeah.
add a little more currently there.
I mean, I don't know if that's definitions that we need to have in our book or if that's it's a broader definition. Or
Noodle on that. Yeah, 19.
We're squirt. Is that a thing?
What is it? Sorry. Oh,
And it includes, this definition includes hotels, lodging and rooming houses, dormitories, bachelor.
I saw that. I just caught that one. It's interesting.
I just, sometimes I would think that in one of our other definitions, we squirt. Because I don't think we get a plethora of applicants wanting.
That would be one. I don't know if that's used in the code anywhere itself. I mean, I would assume it must be, but I don't remember ever seeing it.
so the only place I've actually seen that in use is wedding venues that allow groomsmen or bridesmaids to stay during that. It's hiring it, hotel or anything that it's part. Stay. I don't know. Or not.
Okay.
Have any of that inside the city limits.
Oh, I actually have one more on trailer. Is any vehicle without motive power, probably motor. Or is it motive?
Needs a motive. So
That's a real one. My comments is swinging a miss.
I was right there with snow power count.
Page 20. Getting close. Page 21. That's the end of the definitions.
And again,
I'm
do
gonna-
feel free to add or
Yeah.
give us more comment. I know we don't have time to deep dive
Is
everything.
that all the you don't have any more? Oh,
So we're coming up on an hour and a half. I wanted to ask everyone a 5-minute break, touch legs, and
Sure.
refill waters.
Figure out how to be more concise going through the rest.
We get to just hour and a half. We'll take a quick 5-minute break at 7:01.
Definitions were a lot. It should pick up. I spent hours definitions, so you guys are finding out.
it's in the when we get into family service definition, it's
Mhm.
inclusive.
Yeah.
So I won't bring it.
Mhm.
So just, and that's
Thank you.
consistent.
Yeah. There was some of that where I was trying to catch it.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
I'll try.
Oh, work.
R2, we changed it to medium.
Yeah. R1 and R2 can get looped together.
Yes.
You're ready. Okay. We'll call this meeting back to order at 7:09.
All right. Kicking us back off, we finished definitions. We're going to try to pick up the pace here a little bit. So what we'll do is announce kind of 2 chapters at a time for the next bit here when we're talking about zoning. And just kind of looking to the group to bring up any points you want to that need a group discussion. If not, you could send us your written comments or revisions. So right now we're looking at the R1 single family residential district and the R2, which was called a 2-family residential district. We've renamed to medium density. Any major points of discussion?
These lot size. South square.
Yeah. The mechanism to kind of create something with a unique design or a little bit to deviate from your base standards would be that plan development, that PD application.
And
It would, yeah.
all of the resident.
It would be like a requested plan development. So it's not overlay on everything. It's just if something came in and they wanted to do like you're mentioning, it would come in to request a PD, and then that project would then have to go through planning commission, not only for the subdivision part, but for the requested plan development to reduce setbacks or do a unique design, anything like that. So it would actually go all the way to city council for approval. But these would be your standard base. This is where we're working off of. And then the plan development is the mechanism or tool to request something outside of this. Correct.
Affordable housing.
Yep. Yeah, so there is a tool with the
Same
plan
thing.
development.
Subdivision.
Mhm. Yeah, so yeah. I hear what you're saying. So unless that's a majority concern of the 6,000 feels too like too large of lot minimums and you want to reduce it down, or you want to kind of still rely on that plan development tool to allow for that kind of unique design request. Yeah,
Mhm.
feels okay.
That gives. Really,
Correct. It doesn't have to really
including maybe
fall with this.
facility.
Mhm.
Meaning.
Mhm.
Part of it.
And the old flexibility.
So I have a question on item under permitted uses, item 2 on both the R1 and R2. It says private garages and accessory buildings. So are those allowed without a house? So I can have an R1 or an R2 lot and I can build a garage or a barn?
I think there was, sorry, I thought there was language on that that says that you cannot do that on a residential unless a primary dwelling is established first.
I think there's something somewhere that says that, but it's not referenced here at all. So I think if
Mhm.
that's the case, then either take that out
Mhm.
or
Or add that.
add a
Okay, yeah.
reference.
And if you go back to definitions, accessory building does say incidental to primary.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
to be cleaned up. And then in the R2, it allows, so R2, it says is for 1 or 2 family dwelling manufactured homes, but then we added item 4 that allows group dwelling, multiple dwellings, and added a whole bunch of other stuff in. I mean, that's R3. So I mean, why have R2 if we're going to make it R3?
Yeah, I think that's just more the trend that we're seeing, the 7 unit per acre with a max of 15 units per acre. If that's not Willows, we don't.
That came from the general plan.
Oh, it
Sorry, that's the density from the general plan. So,
The R2 could allow that.
Mhm.
So do we have to then add it into our zoning? So if we're having R1, which is single family, really.
Hmm.
Then we go to R2, which is supposed to be a little more dense, but not as dense. And we're adding all these. We just, how does a jurisdiction control that? I mean, if it's allowed in our,
correct. Yeah.
so what's the point? I mean, if we're making all this permitted point and having an R2 zone.
I think it does function as a transitional zone. So you're not having your R1 going from, 1 or 3
Three.
units on a property. You have this transition that you have 7 units to an acre, right? Or up to 15. And then if we got rid of R2 and you just went straight into, R3, I think we're looking at more of the higher density. So it's more of a transitional.
Oh, but the R2 typically is only 1 or 2 family units, which now if you can have 1 or 2 family units, really junior ADUs and ADUs.
Right.
But now we're saying there can actually be apartment buildings can be big.
Up to 7 units per acre.
So an apartment building, so a unit, if I'm building an apartment,
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you could think of, if you had let's just for ease of everything, 1 acre lot, and they wanted to come in and propose a multifamily dwelling on an R2 with how the current general plan is written, this is to provide consistency with that, correct?
Mhm.
If they can design it to meet it, the max they could do is 15 units on an acre.
and then because this is an ADU or junior ADU that's state controlled, say it's only a half-acre parcel and they want to do a multi, they now have to still meet. And
Yep.
Setbacks,
Landscaping,
lot
open
coverage.
space, private open space.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we still have that.
Yeah. So the lot, the density is there, but it also has to meet everything. That's the max density they could do if they could design it to meet it.
So in our existing R2 zones, we probably don't have a lot of huge
Probably don't
parcels
have a lot.
anyway, so it's probably,
Mhm.
all right.
Any discussion on the R3 zoning?
Well, just clarification. So then does R3 just completely do away with that units per acre? It doesn't state anything I noticed about it. So does it just? That's it.
We might have.
Or I could have. I missed.
It seems to include everything, but well, it does say like multifamily dwellings, but it doesn't list a
We
density.
can confirm with the general plan if we had our density calculated.
No, it's just,
Look,
No, it should
good
be
question.
that means
It
like
should be-
somebody can build like a skyscraper.
Yeah, at least there are height limits.
Oh, okay. But you understand my meaning.
Mhm.
And so in the R3, we can have our group dwellings. And this was always in here. Group dwellings can be in a single row side by side.
So One thing in all this, and I don't know if it's for in our code or not, is we're gonna flip. Is there anything in here that states out of the not this section?
Okay. Then jump into our RP, multiple residential professional districts.
Same thing, Evan, just this zone is
Mhm.
general plan. We talked about bed and breakfast establishments being allowed. And I know some places just bed and breakfast, in general, bed and breakfast, say 5 or yes, other times it doesn't say anything, and then there's a definition somewhere back in. I would just say for consistency, says there's some.
The definition doesn't have a limit. So,
No, but somewhere in the bed and breakfast section.
oh, it did.
In this,
See, okay,
yeah.
I'm following now. Yep. All right, so the entryway district is the next one, and this is what we had been talking about previously about deleting.
I just go
Yes.
back really.
Oh, yeah,
Or
of course.
on page 9 under other regulations.
Mhm.
It just says lot development requirements for single family and 2 was just struck out. Nothing was added.
Maybe should type. So I think as Amy mentioned, the entryway zone was proposed as deleted as its own district and just consolidated under general commercial. That being said, if there's, and maybe we don't have time tonight, but just to know if there's elements of this entryway district that you really want to emphasize or have specific to that corridor that we really need to pay attention to or call out, whether it's design or use or restrictions, that would be helpful for guidance on us making specific. If we don't want to lose the essence of the entryway district, we just might have to lose the name because our general plan no longer references that.
And I think it would be easy enough to set a parameter, say along Wood Street from X to X, you will now abide by these design standards.
Can we remove live work unit out of that?
Yeah. I had added, that was part of my noodling. And that got added in, but we can definitely delete that.
I personally,
Mhm.
not like street. It's bigger.
Yeah.
It's gonna create more.
Mhm.
Concern.
Yeah, that's, along the,
Thank
when it's the newer part of town anyway. When even when the Catholic, St. Monica's Catholic Church was built way out there.
Yeah. Are we good to move on? I was going to combine the central commercial and general commercial together. They're pretty similar, but different.
And then, well,
No.
on the entryway, is there anything about? Seems like there needs to be a strict level of.
And by up, you just mean like ongoing maintenance, or you want to see more
Like-
required design elements like street improvements, sidewalk bits, like benches, things like that too.
I mean, there's that aspect. I'm strict House that to up for issue, how to address that. But it's not a
Yeah, that can be tough. I guess if you got to a type of light or an appearance look to it, but with repaints and if they're within the design review, we don't touch residents in design review either. So
But if it's in the entryway district, it shouldn't be resident. Oh, it's.
so all the old houses
alley.
that are in there.
It's a 100-plus-year-old place.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, there's avenues to potentially go down there. And just a note too, because the entryway district is Wood Street, we don't have any control over how that's sidewalks. That's all Caltrans. So that is totally out of our purview to require anything to be done as far as that goes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Biggest thing I've heard. Like bang. Why don't come down to come in because that area.
Mhm.
I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I hear
Mm.
that. Abby.
Scary thing about it is Tehama Street used to be worse. For some recent major improvements along structures.
I know, 'cause if you think about it, that's like, that's the outside of our town. Drive down Wood, you go down to, why would you want to go?
Right. That's how you get in here.
Mhm.
And you can't wait to get out of here.
Exactly.
It's-
Feels like. no.
So those are code enforcement.
Yep. And like I said, we practice a complaint-driven system. So if we get those complaints, we can then investigate them. And that because we don't do active code enforcement because we get into the issues of you're picking on me and not picking on them. So unfortunately, if we don't get the complaint coming through, we don't go around looking unless it's a health and safety issue.
circling back. Nuisance, term nuisance.
Mhm.
To me, that seems like nuisance to me. So then when it need abatement, considered a nuisance to the. Now, what do we talk about plate structure? Not yard.
This would all be code enforcement building and not the planning piece of it.
Sweet.
Yeah, no, and honestly, we've done a good job, I think, of capturing all of these things. As far as that goes in code enforcement, vehicles on the front lawn, those kinds of things. So there's specifics, but I can go through that with you.
Okay.
Make sure that we've got things.
Later date.
Yeah, absolutely, that we can look at.
It's slowing us up.
Okay, going on to the Central Commercial District. Food business.
Questions
Hmm?
with the mo- We can talk about that one. T-Mobile. Mark. Play with it.
Abby. Up now.
I think the intent is that the new news automobile sales, if you had that business and it states automotive repair, that your accessory use where one would be a customer based piece of it. The accessory use would be you fixing up your own cars within that building. So it's incidental to the business itself, not the business itself. Or you own a lawnmower shop and you're going to service the lawnmowers in that shop. It can't be the primary driver of it, but you're allowed to work on your equipment within that area. That's the way I always took it.
COVID. Street. Limit.
Sidewalk cafe, or you're just saying for the seating.
Parking. Nice. Enter. You. For that. If
Yeah.
that's what.
The only issue that kind of comes up there, and Amy brought it up, is it can't be within the right of way. Like, you have to be out of public right of way. Well, then if let's say the place has 10 parking spaces and that's the amount of parking required for their square footage of their building, then yeah.
Right.
Parking exemption.
Mhm.
But I don't
Right
know
now,
if
you
other
can-
restaurants they open up.
Yeah.
Gates.
Right.
Commerce, I think.
You take requests like
Up
that
to
in now.
council.
No, we don't have
That's
I don't
what
think-
Sidewalk cafe
Seems to
type.
me that
No.
that's.
we don't have a mechanism for it. And to me, it's similar to an encroachment permit, but not right. And
Yeah.
it would be issued with consideration of business and what they want to do. But yeah, it was very popular during COVID to have the dining outside and it opened up that look. So it'd just be
Parking. Yeah, yeah.
Sycamore Creek.
If we get us to a place where downtown has a parking problem,
That would be
Then
positive.
we'll revisit. it.
So if we could make sure that we have nothing that restricts that. It's just.
Rick, you mentioned page 34 in sales. Street. Did you suggest, lifting that restriction to Stahima Street? I think that's what I heard you say.
No, I was talking about 10, 15 below that limits the employees. The operations.
Yeah.
Just thought that.
I think partly it's because it's central. And I think get to the general type of
Want to encourage,
or
yeah,
retail. It's more.
not automobile focused. Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a I missed.
Well, we're just in, it's just the,
Well,
Together.
reason I asked
I don't,
about 10 was, years and years ago, who knew car dealers street
Mhm.
for decades, many decades. And you could buy almost every make of American vehicle in the street. So if the automobile dealership come in, they're restricted to Amos Street only. Say, in other words,
Mhm.
if
That's just
Only if they're in
the general.
residential, not restricted.
okay, all right. Thanks, Rick.
Right, general commercial. The items to
and we're all kinds. I'm not sure about going to all the still second story. It's a slippery slope. Space of housing people. Something's better than nothing.
I mean, the way it's written out, it is second story or higher.
That's what that code. I didn't. But with the conditional,
And but that would have been years ago, just as a requirement housing.
Mhm.
Or, with that second floor apartment type.
basically central commercial. That's where I thought that was central story. It is as a permitted use, general commercial. So if someone wants to do on the ground, I actually,
It's all uses in any residential zone.
Number one, yeah.
so that's sorry. Notes. I put really the danger of going once we this is my experience when the dispensary.
Yeah.
Once we say you conditionally they come in and say by putting it in here, setting ourselves up. Shouldn't in here in a single story general. And we ask the question that once we then we have pushing the balance. This code allows to say we have space for help, which is expensive. So I agree. I think long term.
Are you talking about just a second story or the loopholes?
And so removing item under uses permitted with conditional use permit, remove all uses permitted in residential zone. Is there objection? I mean, that's taking away what you currently have. That's
So you're taking away item, so under, see.
Is that months ago? The house. Office. professional downstairs. Residential. Yeah. That. Was it? I think we need flexibility. Right.
I think if I just,
I'm just, point
Would-
that out. Reverted back, right? Yes. Yeah, it was it was a residential home long. And for decades it was. I just.
Hey. I don't necessarily. Excited.
but as a conditional use,
Certain sections.
all uses permitted. Applicant.
The conditional use permit, it's possible. It would have to not only be conditioned appropriately, it would have to also make the findings of the seat. There could be an instance where maybe it's not safe, like there's a safety issue or there be a parking issue, there could be other issues. So it's not just a guarantee you request a conditional use permit, you get a conditional use permit. It has to meet findings, agree to conditions. Yeah. Mhm.
Regardless of what our code says, California legislature, we speak. And we're trying to force that down all over through. Regardless of what.
You just have to
You know-
remove items. It's in there.
Then
under
there's a,
permitted use.
it's just saying in a, see,
Doesn't it?
No, I don't,
Get approved?
is that correct?
yeah,
5.02.
Even if you check all their boxes.
the box.
That's the area that we're discussing. That's
This would be general, which isn't central. Only residential and central, second. General.
And that,
I mean, I
and that
understand
was,
what you're saying.
and that was done, the second level was done to satisfy the state law for housing.
Opportunity were to me. Step. This is under. This is permitted. Second. On the second story. To use is permitted. Use.
What you're saying makes sense. Steve. It's legal.
No, come-
I think you're looking south of Oak off of Sycamore on Tehama would be the distance, and then
That's a-
it's Oak. I think it's Oak. Well, maybe it is Laurel.
It's Laurel.
Is it Laurel?
Yeah.
Yeah, but according to
I agree.
The one issue I'll bring up is that we would then start being inconsistent with your general. Right.
Whether I understood it.
Yeah, I read it. I read it too.
So there may be ways to add that second story language in there, like it's permitted with a conditional use permit on the second. I don't know. That's what we're gonna find a compromise here.
Yeah, also, the height limit is 35 feet.
See, I like the sec-
no, I do like that feature.
Is there a potential to discuss it later and then do a general plan amendment? So that way these things align if we did them all as a group potentially?
I'm good with removing items 1 and 2, section 60.
Let us take that information and see what's gonna cause hiccups or inconsistencies. We don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could get we could get some language.
With some, with some verbiage.
Yeah, let us digest that a bit to see where we can land. And
Layman's.
Because our general plan complies with state law.
yeah,
We
you
don't
just
want to
recently
do.
adopted that.
Our
Yeah.
general plan currently complies with California state law. So we start making changes without enough adequate research here.
Yeah.
We could be in violation of state law and we don't want that.
Mhm.
That, the housing law, we don't
Right, no.
want that.
Well,
But the consensus is a more restrictive on the residential ability be the preference
Sure.
in the general commercial.
well, the
Makes sense.
go to residential. Very difficult.
Also, the height limit in that district still 35 feet. So we're not talking about giant six
High-rise
stories.
apartment.
Yeah, high rise
Well,
apartment
that's-
building.
Maybe that's a separate discussion. Right.
Well,
For
that's
that
a
area.
ladder truck issue.
Yeah, but if you're putting under conditional use permit,
If they buy us a new
we
ladder
have a
truck, they can
fund.
build 40
we
feet.
have a fund to
It's a
build.
good deal.
I mean, isn't that what we asked of the 3-story hotel that wanted to come in?
All right, we'll take note of that and continue forth. Going on to our highway commercial district.
Well, things, spaces. I don't. Automo- And and when you space.
I'd like to see office space stay in flexibility. I don't think we should be
Could
limiting.
we call it similar to everything else?
Yeah. Hmm.
Because what's the difference between that?
That's one
Sure.
example I was.
Yeah, I mean, a what? A what? A what?
A Turkish
The
bath.
Turkish bath.
Turkish bat?
It's
It's
one
called
of
out.
the definition.
Yeah, it wasn't
Oh.
the definition.
I missed that. I read it all. Huh.
Are we good to move on to light industrial? That one, I don't think we made any changes to that section.
We should be getting some money off.
Yeah. Next section was heavy industrial. I did add utility facilities just because that seems to be a booming industry that's becoming more and more popular. So I thought to modernize it.
What was that? What?
Utility facilities. And then I also added a definition of that as well.
It didn't. Us.
No, but I can make it at biomass. Thank you. Yeah. Great point.
Blacksmith shops and cast. How many? This is some of the quaint stuff, I think, a blacksmith shop or a,
We had one up
Testing
until a few
company.
years ago.
Really? is
Yeah,
that, who's,
kitty corner behind the old well, kind of across the alley from Napa. In the alley access, fronting Amos Street. Yeah. Mhm. Yep, they made me some new springs.
Oh, and the map or geographically.
It's decently small. Look at that.
it's to,
It- oh,
Dark. It goes still.
You still see like
A lot of places still have it. They carry over. It depends if it's unique.
it's still
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah.
hurt to
I
call
went
it.
to a
Right.
glass blowing.
keep it in.
Yeah.
We had one.
I feel like it's also becoming more popular. There's a resurrection of it. Yeah.
What area were you looking at, Bobby?
Unless you guys want to add like data center. That nature. Yeah, and that's a whole nother.
and I think the other thing is we talk about our zoning districts and what they say is if we were ever to annex another part into the city and we wanted to look at those zones, knowing what types of uses open to. Have them.
And I'm pretty much seeing that the heavy manufacturing is only just south of our wastewater treatment plant, which would be those rice fields for future development of heavy manufacturing. A strip along Tehama,
Yeah, we got someone,
yep, just would be to the east of the railroad tracks and to the,
because from Laurel, where the existing dryer is.
it would be, yes, correct. From Laurel to the south and then from Laurel to the north, boarding the tracks would be light industrial.
And we talked several years ago, we discussion, council meeting, keeping that heavy industrial there just in case something, between your light industrial and heavy industrial to come in. So, margin.
Good to move on. All right. The open space district. That one we left untouched. That one's about parks. The agricultural general district. I think we also left that one untouched. Comment.
We don't.
I don't think so.
We don't, but we didn't feel removing it completely. I guess if we want to keep it open, if someone wanted to rezone to that, and that could be for tax purposes. I mean, there could be a lot of other,
And as we expand, I mean, things like fertilizer manufacturing and things of that nature, not just,
kind of left it there.
Well, and also with all the acreage and basis.
Well, and
Mhm.
a big limiter on that too is some of the facilities you guys are talking about, either fertilizer storage and 40-acre lot
Minimum.
size as a minimum is going to keep a lot of the veterinary hospital. Whereas is that covered under professional or a different area that hospital wanted to come in? Is that going to be covered under a different district? Because I don't think a vet hospital needs 40 acres to
No.
fix my dog.
Mhm.
Yeah, that use is allowed in other zone districts. This is just saying it is a use, an optional use, conditional use permit in zone district. I imagine someone's not going to buy a 40-acre lot just for that. There was maybe, for instance, if there's like an equestrian facility and they wanted to also produce or put a large animal hospital on their site, they would be permitted to do so in the in the ag general district, do something like that.
Yeah, the only thing under that still has a transitional and supportive housing. So you have to be in there because I don't want our ag land transitional housing. Ag.
Yeah, we didn't touch that. We can take a look at it and see if it's.
Representative for page.
So I'm on page 45.
I think because we have the one single family residence listed, that transitional housing is also having to be a part of that, but it's just, we can look at that.
Then again, we make it for the single family residence has to be co-op with other 5.
I
I
think,
understand if I bought 40 acres, like let's say up a Basin Street, and
Yep.
I'd want my house there,
absolutely.
but I'm not going to plant. I'm not going to build a transitional house. Then
And I think we'll look into the legality of it. I feel like it's going to be one of those, if you have the single family, then you also have to have
allow for single family. You have to
have
allow
the
for
transitional,
class.
because they can't be treated any different than any other house. So the option to do that would be there if you had the option to put a single family residence there, is the way that I understand it, but we check that out.
We can confirm, but yeah.
Yep.
Or was this some kind of a state requirement?
It is a state
Stuck
requirement.
here.
I think if you say single family housing, you're going to be able to do all the ADU stuff you want, and you're going to have to do the transitional housing just like we have in our districts. And that's a state mandate.
And there's no way to disallow longer. Districts,
Yep, for rentals, yes,
but I mean, you're gonna be renting the house out to additional.
different. Right, so you can have, I mean, I've seen these in other municipalities with VRBO limits on the amount of you can have. These are, I think, have to be tied back to programs. I'm not the legality of it, but you can't have a long-term rental without meeting that specific definition of a transit, which is codified in the California government. So renting it out over to people who don't meet the qualifications would be different than the transitional housing piece itself.
Okay. It did.
No, and
State's
so
already-
it's required by the state. I think
They've
if
already
we,
got us.
yep.
All right, moving forward, agricultural combining district. Any comments? I don't think we made any changes to that section.
Separate.
Mhm. I don't know if we have.
Yeah, this
Any
would be
person-
more like an overlay district. It basically would be combined with some other base zone. And what it would do is just allow additional ag-related that may or may not come with that. So instead of needing that 40-acre minimum, right, you have a existing parcel, and you want to add a ag combining to allow you to do housing of livestock or that's the point of that district. We don't want to get rid of it. It's not really utilized. We don't see anything zoned with the ag combining, but I don't think it hurts to have it.
No, I think it's a good idea.
And public facilities districts, not much there to really.
We had that discussion at our general plan.
All right, the next one was the frontage combining. We had recommended deleting that. No parcels are zoned with
What was it?
the frontage combining.
Page 49. Right, then we get into the plan development combining district. Again, this kind of PD would be applied to a project that came in and requested reviewed as a plan development. Really the purpose is to provide kind of redevelopment, unique design features, things like that, that maybe the base zone wouldn't really allow. So again, don't recommend taking it out, but if you want to see anything changed or added, as it was written, we felt pretty good shape.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump back real quick. Agricultural combining. That be combined to any district that's in here?
Yeah,
And
essentially they.
What's the requirements or the restrictions on to here in town? Do that in town, then allowed to do small livestock chicken coop. I mean,
So
I'm
the
asking-
request to get to that district would actually be like a rezone. They would rezone their property. Let's just, for example, an RS
So they'd
one,
actually have to request.
a rezone. And if adding the
Right.
ag combining district has any kind of detriment to your neighbor's health, safety,
Gotcha, okay.
we could
Just
deny that
confirm
request.
There's some sort
Yeah,
of safeguard.
it gets reviewed all the way to the council.
Okay.
Real quick, we're at 2.5 hours now, and we're about halfway through. Any thoughts or sentiment on how late we want to do this for? Because I think we've got some of the more discussion action items to come. Is everybody good with just continuing as is? Do we want to try to finish in the next half hour? Do we want to? Well, so what we can do that with them virtually. What we're trying to protect is the amount of hours we have left on their contract and them coming down here to do it. And the goal today was to try to get through this to provide them all comments for them to come back with a formal, more defined, redlined, ready to be looked over one more time and then move forward with planning commission recommendation and potential adoption. So yes. I'll leave it up to you. I think we've got a lot to get through still, and we're at 2.5 hours, and we're not going to make it. And it's
Well, there's a lot of meat coming up.
yeah,
We're talking food trucks.
there's a lot to go still. So I'm not going to make a recommendation, but I would recommend that, yes, we probably call it and we can submit comments and then maybe do a virtual quicker meeting to go through everything. The original scope had this meeting and then coming back with revisions. So I think we probably hopefully have hours to not make an amendment by adding another small virtual meeting or doing something of that nature. But I don't think we're going to gain
What
much
can
by.
we get through 3 minutes?
We can pick a topic if you guys want. We can comprehensive sign.
Absolutely.
The
Use
important
specific-
stuff's coming up.
Yep.
Well, one thing is, if each of you on the council and the planning commission have items that are like, hey, I want to change something and I need some consensus and we need to talk about it versus here's a typo or could you just tell me more about what this means? I mean, that could be done via an email if you want to learn more
Yep.
about planning, right? So, I mean, maybe some of you have burning items for the second half of the Title 18 that you think in the next 30 minutes, like you would really like to persuade your colleagues to go one way or the other. Those are the items I would recommend that you try to talk about within the next, 25 minutes if you're going to call it a night at 8:30. If you think that you can't do that, then just skip it. And I would say probably end it unless you want to continue on indefinitely.
I mean, if we're getting it.
So absolutely. What it comes down to is if we do have billable hours less, once we exceed those billable hours, then we would need to amend our current contract to allow more money. I'm not saying another 2-hour meeting would put us there, but we don't know the amount of work and it looks like we might have a lot of edits at that amount of work. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of do we run out of hours before we complete? So what was on the budget was to do one of these and then move forward. So adding another one is obviously going to eat into that contract amount. I think we're doing pretty on par or a little better on our billable hours. So, but emailing these to them would allow them to kind of work out the nuances. And then if you have big discussion items, maybe we can set a 1-2 hour virtual meeting up while we're here and they're not here and driving down again for those times too. So I think to clear it, really the only discussion I think that needs to happen, which has already happened, is kind of the nuances. And if we want to discuss things as a council and planning commission, then we can have that smaller follow-up meeting to work that out. But
Right.
no, those would be sent individually. And then my thought would be is we would get together and it would have to be an agendized meeting. And then we would go over the remainder of the comments in the sections that we haven't.
The other option is we could ask if you guys are willing to come back again and do the second half and then make a decision once we look at it globally. Do we have enough in the budget now that we've seen all the different things that people want to do? Are we running out? And whether or not the council wants to come back and make like a change order to increase the budget if that's necessary. I mean, we could, if you guys are amenable, we could also come back and just do the second half and then make a decision about what we can afford to do after that. And also, I don't know if there's Harrison Associates is also the city planner. And I don't know where we are on budget in terms of the fiscal year of their regular contract with the city. And there might be some funds there that we can use. I haven't looked. Have you looked?
They're good. We definitely do. So we were able to pay for 20,000 out of it from the grant as well. And their actual expenditures for this year and to what we budgeted we're at a good pace.
I think Joe was suggesting doing this meeting with Harrison Associates virtually via Zoom with everybody on Zoom, doing it and getting through the rest of it. versus coming back and doing it in person.
And in between then, providing the comments to us that we can get, where no decisions being made, but we can clear some of those things. So,
That'll speed a lot of time.
yeah, if you've got
All
the,
these questions get forwarded.
hey, this definition doesn't make sense, or this doesn't work, we can handle those. And then when they come back, they'll go, we made this change, this change, this change. And then we can just work on the high
Well, I
discussion.
was
item.
also just wondering, are there people here, council members, planning commissioners that have a burning issue or something they would really like to see changed and different that requires a substantive discussion?
I think the food truck section doesn't really address one of the underlying concerns. That is most business. Stay there. Temporary bathroom. And that's, talk about a mobile business. Yet now we talk about a mobile food business. Have garbage cans and bathrooms permanently.
What page?
That's
65.
section.
I know, I read it. I like it as presented.
It's page 65.
I like the language. I like the language as presented from a consultant on the mobile food truck.
I'd like to
So-
see a definition of a mobile.
I'm only one of five, but that's where I
That,
stand on
that
it.
includes it being permanently in one location.
Well,
So
and that's
this is-
why I asked it again, because I want to hear everybody's opinion. Like, Larry, you just had a really strong opinion. Lori, I
Yes.
just heard yours. I don't like the idea of everybody just submitting questions. I want to see those questions.
Mhm.
I want to hear. If this is really important, then I just think we
So we could definitely do the other meeting. I think the question is how long do we want to continue now? And then we will set up a secondary meeting and have everybody come in person. It's totally fine.
fire.
Yep.
Let's do.
I mean,
So here's what I'm kind of hearing. I do believe that we need another meeting, a face-to-face setting. I don't know if you two necessarily need to be here or us to hash out our differences on trucks and things like that. I think that's where we need to get together. Council and Planning Commission. And then,
And then
and then
present it.
That would be-
those notes go directly to you.
I vote
Instead of
that.
them getting-
And then you do the changes and then we come back and we do the virtual meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so does that sound like a good game plan? We'll set up another meeting.
yep, totally fine with that.
Okay.
I think
We
that
get our ducks in order.
checks the boxes of saving the billable hours and then getting them information.
Yeah.
We'll just send them the video of the meeting when we.
So Carlene, did you get all that? So essentially, we're gonna set up another joint meeting about Harrison Associates. And then once we get our dialogue from that, sent that over, once they get a semifinal draft done, then we will do the Zoom meeting, another joint meeting, Zoom them in for the
Just to
sort out all
clarify,
the edges.
sorry, Mayor, just to clarify, and the idea of the joint meeting is to start where you're leaving off here, right? We're not
I think we're good. I
Yeah.
think we're good with where we're at tonight.
Right. Okay.
Is
Thank you,
Yes.
Councilmember Busby.
that all we got?
Perfect solution.
So I just want to say how much I appreciate meeting with the council and hearing from you guys. Tonight's been really good for me.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoy collaboration.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd like to say thank you for serving on the planning commission.
Yeah.
I think we do.
So,
Yeah, we should all be on
So-
the same.
oh, this is so convoluted. I don't think anybody's that knowledgeable. Except staff.
It's
No,
good.
they are. All right. But, oh, really, it's something. Yeah.
I think we all want.
And this is only part of it.
Terrible Okay. With that, we will call this meeting to adjournment at 8:12. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you to the public for hanging in there.